So I thought I'd make this video for the person that's new to bicycle commuting to show them the tools that they need to carry to get themselves home in case of any mechanical that they might encounter on the road. And there's a couple different ways to carry your tools, and I like to carry the tools that I need in a saddlebag. And the reason I like to carry them in a saddlebag is because they're always on the bike and there's not really a chance I'm going to forget anything. If I carry them in panniers or in a backpack, I may have had to take them out to make room for something else and forgot to put them back in. So I'm not saying that happens often, but there's just a greater chance for that happening. Also, if the bike that you commute with is also the same bike that you like to go on group rides or solo rides with, then having a saddlebag, your tools are always there. So I prefer to carry my tools in a saddlebag. Because I put everything into a saddlebag, as you can see, I don't have much space. So I like to pack my inner tubes, both brand new and after I've patched them, to get them into as tight of a ball as possible to give me more room in a saddlebag to put more stuff. So, inner tubes. I buy these inner tubes in bulk when I can. Things that I look for, which might be of interest to you just starting out, is that I like the longer valve stem. These are 48 millimeters. It just gives more valve for my tire pump to grab onto. The shorter ones I found get too close to the rim, and then my tire pump has been kicked off. So I like to be able to push it down onto the valve stem as much as possible and then tighten it on there before I start to pump up. The shorter ones, I don't feel I can get it down there and grab as much of the valve stem as I would like to. So I look for the longer ones, in this case 48 millimeters, and then of course the other thing you're going to want to make sure you get are tires that fit, inner tubes that fit your tire. I ride with 700 by 25, so I made sure that I got inner tubes that would fit that. Something else which is nice about these, I buy the cheaper ones because, well, I buy them in bulk and I'm not concerned about saving weight. And in fact, the nice thing is that the cheaper ones are normally more heavy, and I'd rather ride with a heavier inner tube to help minimize any flats I might get than an ultralight racing inner tube. So fortunately for me, the heavier ones are the cheaper ones, and I can buy these in bulk when they go on sale. If you're curious what this 19 by 26 means, is that's the width of the inner tube. So if you were to take some calipers and measure the width, it would be somewhere in that range, and then in this case it's close to 21. So according to the manufacturer, this is going to go fit anything as low as 19 millimeters wide up to 26 millimeters wide. And regarding tire size, as a commuter, I prefer the wider tire, and I have a fixed gear that can allow the wider tires. So I ride 700 by 25. Okay, so as you can see, when these come out of the box, the manufacturer isn't concerned about space, and so that's one reason why I repack them. The other reason I repack them is because they're also not concerned, well, in this case, the way that it's been folded. I wouldn't want to put this into my saddlebag because of the way it's folded around the valve stem. I have had quite a few inner tubes fail because of air leaking from where the valve stem has been put into the inner tube, and so just because of that, I like to refold these to minimize any stress that's put on this area. And as you can see, it's got a fold right there that I wouldn't like, and in addition, of course, it's not as compact as I would like. So even the new ones I repack to fit in there. But okay, so this one, inner tube, I just patched. And I know it's good to fold up because I've had air in it for a few days and it's held the air. So the first thing you want to do if you're going to repack these to fit into your saddlebag is to get all the air out of the inner tube. And to do that, I start from the opposite end of the valve. So, and So I'm going to start from here. This is the opposite end of the valve, and I'm going to just roll it as I pull and then work all the air out towards the valve. And before I start, I'm going to close the valve. And you might think this is something that you wouldn't want to do, but in fact you do. Just by the nature of the rubber, it wants to go back to its original shape, and the original shape, you know, there's a cavity in there where the air is going to be. So if you close this, any air that you push out is not going to be able to come back in. So I start with it closed, and then, like I said, I roll from the end opposite of the valve as I pull it, working my way to the valve and pushing the air out as I go. And I pull to make sure the air can't sneak back in, and then at some point, if there is enough air in there, you'll see that this is starting to bulge up, and I will see it's sneaking back in. I can see it right there. So I'm going to let some of this air out. Close it back up. Like I said, otherwise the air will come back in. And then pull as you go. Get as much air out as you can. And the reason you want to do this is because in the final state there's going to be a little appendix that if there's any air in there, it'll be full of air and it just doesn't look right. And it's going to take up more space than you want. This is not how I'm putting this into the bag. By doing it this way, you also make sure that you're not going to get any twists in your inner tube. So there's still some air in there. Alright, so tighten that back up, close the valve. So for the most part, most all the air should be out of here. And that looks to be the case. And then, as I said before, you want to make sure that these line up or lie flat against each other and that there's no twists in this. So, alright. I keep this. I don't necessarily ride with these on the inner tube, but when I pack them up, I do put them on. I don't want this pointy piece of metal to make a hole in the inner tube when it's in the saddlebag. So I cover that up. And then, like I said before, I want to minimize the stress that's put on this area. So I want to make sure I don't have any folds near this area. And what I'll do to do that is I make like a ledge at the top, and I'll just fold it out so that way the fold is not near where the inner tube, where the valve's coming out of the inner tube. And then I'll just run the inner tube down the length of the valve, and then I'm going to fill up this area and this area with consecutive laps of or folds of the inner tube, 2 or 3. And I come down past the end of the valve when I do that. I just make these folds on the outside of it, and the number of folds you're going to make is going to depend upon how wide you make the top of your fold. So there's 2 on that side, 2 on that side. Okay, I could probably do one more if I wanted to, but what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pull and just wrap it around, and I'm going to fold these folds under that. And do the same on that side. And then just keep wrapping it around. Here. And then that's what I ended up with. And then you can, if you did have air in here, this would be all filled with air, and you'd want to get that out and just restart. There's a little bit in there, but I'm okay with that. So I've gotten it smaller, and then I've gotten the stress off of the valve stem. And then the other thing that I like to do is I take shrink wrap, and you can use saran wrap too if you want, but I've purchased some shrink wrap, and then I just wrap that around even more to cinch it up more. A couple things this does, it gives a couple more layers around the inner tube to keep any sand or grit from making holes in here, and it also compacts it just a little bit more. So, and it keeps its shape when it's in the saddlebag. So that's what it starts out looking new, and then this is what I end up with. And it's smaller, and of course there's no stress on the valve stem where it meets the inner tube. This is what's in my saddlebag, things you're going to want. I ride a fixed gear, so I need a 15mm wrench, and I've chosen a wrench that fits in my saddlebag. Longer ones, of course, won't work. 15mm on both sides, and that folds to help it fit in there. I have a hex wrench for my crank bolts. I had a spell where my crank bolts would come loose, and I don't have a multi-tool that has a hex wrench this size, so I had to put one in there. Tire levers, and of course your inner tube, and you're going to need a multi-tool. In my case, I purchased one that's came that way, and I'll explain that a little bit more. And then you're going to want a tire pump. I chose this tire pump because it fits in my saddlebag. Some people are going to want a larger one or a frame pump. I just prefer to have one that fits in my saddlebag. It's a Crank Brothers, and I don't know if they still make these, but it's got both the Presta and Schrader valves, and then it's got, you can't read it, but the end switches for both high volume and then high pressure. The high pressure is important because you want to get the tire pressure back up as high as you can after you fix your flat, so that way you don't get another flat on the way home from a snake bite. And then I also carry a CO2 canister to, if for some reason I ever want to just if this breaks, I can use this. Make sure you get the 16 gram. 12 gram is not going to get you to the pressure that you want, and make sure you know how to use this. You don't want to be using this for the first time on a dark, cold night, because that's probably when you're going to need to use it. So practice with this a few times. They're not expensive, so get a couple of these, and then practice with a couple of these before you have to use it for real. Now, your multi-tool, you're going to want to make sure that it's got a variety of different sizes of hex wrenches. I'm not sure if you can see that, but and then the other thing you're going to want is a chain tool, and there are other parts that go to this that I have, but make sure that your multi-tool has a chain tool. It's very important to have that. And other things that may come in handy are going to be a Phillips screwdriver, and then there is a flathead screwdriver there, bottle opener if you need it, but anybody that would have to open up their saddlebag to get to a bottle opener probably isn't doing it right. I've never used any of these wrenches here, and nor have I ever used this spoke wrench, but that's what it came with. Like I said, I was mainly concerned about a tool that had a chain tool, and then the hex wrenches. So now my saddlebag has another pocket that I keep the smaller items in, because if you keep the small items in the big compartment, what's going to happen eventually is that you're going to develop a hole here from where the bag rubs up against the seat post, and then those small things are going to just fall out. And as an example, there's a hole that has been made here from where the bag has rubbed up against the bottom of the saddle. So it happens, and I had to replace a saddlebag because it had developed holes down there. But so that's why the pocket's important, so that way the small items don't fall out through something like that. This is the chuck for the CO2 canister. Again, know how to use this before you need to on a dark, cold night. These are glueless patches. These work well. This is going to be pretty much your last resort. So if for some reason the inner tube, that your spare tube, has a hole in it, or it's not holding air, you can at least maybe find the hole and then patch it and then get yourself home with one of these. So these are glueless patches. You might also consider that you're going to have to carry tools specific for you and your bike. This is a screw that I need for my chain tensioner, the Surly tug nut. The original screw on that broke, so I had to take it to the hardware store, and I found 2 screws that would fit my tug nut, and they're not expensive, so I bought 2. So if the one that's on my bike now happens to break, I've got another one. And oh, you need a Presta Schrader adapter. These are nice if you're near a gas station that has free air, or if you got a quarter or 50 cents and you want to use it. You can put this on your Presta inner tube, and which is going to adapt it to a Schrader, and then you can fill your inner tubes up at the gas station. One caution with that is you have to be careful, because the PSI coming out of those things is much more that's going to be coming out of your tire pump. So be careful when you use this at the gas station. Just put that on your tire just for a little bit, because you don't want to overinflate with the gas station pump, which can be done easily. I carry an extra one of those, the valve covers. Not sure why, but I do. I've got the space, and I have a chain link, a quick link, I think is what they're called, and I don't have anything else in there. So that's what I carry. This is part of the chain tool that goes to this part of the multi-tool. And again, this is something you're going to know how to use before you have to use it on a cold, dark night. And that's, for me, that's how this works. So, and you're going to need to know how to use these ledges. But that's what I carry in my saddlebag. And I think I've pretty much covered most anything that can happen to me on the road. I can fix a flat. I can fix my chain. I can, use my 15mm wrench to move my wheel back to tighten my chain if I need to. This will help me get the tire off, so I can replace the inner tube. You're going to need one of these, of course, to inflate the inner tube. And if this breaks, I've got this as a backup. And then if my inner tube has a flat, I've got the glueless patches. So that should, and I can't stress enough how much this chain tool will help you, because it's going to happen. You're going to need to use this. So, thanks.